Hi, and welcome to this Now Maths Revise Now video on solving quadratic equations by factorising. Before we get started, we actually need to know what we mean by a quadratic equation. Well, a quadratic equation is an equation where the greatest power of any term is 2. We would see terms like x squared or y squared in a quadratic equation. And here's an example of what a quadratic equation might look like. There are three main methods we can use to solve equations that look like this. We can solve quadratic equations by factorising, using the quadratic formula, or completing the square. In this video, we'll only look at solving quadratic equations by factorising. This means by putting the expression on one side of the equation into a bracket or brackets. If you're unfamiliar with factorising quadratics, we have several videos on the Now Maths channel linked below that you may want to watch first. Then you can come back here when you're ready. Now let's have a look at some examples. To solve both quadratic equations on screen, we need to factorise them first. So starting with the one on the left, to factorise, we need to find two numbers that multiply to make 12 and add to make 8. If we list the factors of 12, we could have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. Out of these pairs, the pair that add to make 8 is 2 and 6. This means that when we factorise into double brackets, we're going to have positive 2 in one of the brackets and positive 6 in the other. These brackets are next to each other, which means they're being multiplied by each other. If two expressions are being multiplied to give an answer of 0, at least one of the two expressions must be 0. This means that either x plus 2 equals 0 or x plus 6 equals 0. Now we have two separate linear equations and we can solve each of them separately. So the one on the left, we can subtract 2 from each side to give us a solution of x equals negative 2. And for the one on the right, we can subtract 6 from each side to give us a solution of x equals negative 6. So this quadratic has two possible solutions, either x equals negative 2 or x equals negative 6. This is the case for not all, but most quadratics. Now looking at the second question, to factorise this time we need to find two numbers that multiply to make negative 35 and add to make negative 2. If we're going to list the numbers that multiply to make negative 35, one of the numbers must be negative and the other one positive. So the numbers that multiply to make negative 35 are negative 1 and 35, negative 35 and 1, negative 5 and 7, and negative 7 and 5. Out of all of these, we need the pair that add to make negative 2. Out of all of these pairs, negative 7 and 5 add to make negative 2. This means that when we factorise into double brackets, we'll have negative 7 in one and positive 5 in the other. Since the two expressions in the brackets are being multiplied to give an answer of 0, one of the expressions in the brackets must be equal to 0. So either x subtract 7 equals 0 or x add 5 equals 0. Now solving each of these separately, for the one on the left we're going to add 7 to both sides to give us a solution of x equals 7, and for the one on the right we're going to subtract 5 from each side to give us a solution of x equals negative 5. So this quadratic equation has solutions of x equals 7 or x equals negative 5. Let's have a look at two more examples. To factorise the question on the left, we need to find two numbers that multiply to make 4 and add to make negative 5. If we're going to list the numbers that multiply to make positive 4, we could have two positive numbers, so 1 and 4, or 2 and 2, or we could have two negative numbers, so negative 1 and negative 4, or negative 2 and negative 2. Since the two numbers have to add together to make negative 5, the numbers we must be looking for are negative 1 and negative 4. This means that when we factorise into double brackets, we're going to have negative 1 in one of the brackets and negative 4 in the other. Since one of the two brackets must equal 0, this means that either x subtract 1 equals 0 or x subtract 4 equals 0. Solving the equation on the left by adding 1 to each side will give us a solution of x equals 1, and solving the equation on the right by adding 4 to each side will give us a solution of x equals 4. So this quadratic equation has solutions of x equals 1 or x equals 4. For the equation on the right, the left-hand side of this equation is what we call the difference of two squares, since x is being squared and 49 is 7 squared, and it's a difference because it's a subtraction. The left-hand side will factorise into double brackets, and we need to find two numbers that multiply to make negative 49 and add to make 0 since there's no x term. Positive 7 and negative 7 do this, so that's what goes in our brackets. Now we solve in the same way as the previous questions. So either x add 7 equals 0 or x subtract 7 equals 0. Solving on the left by subtracting 7 from each side gives us a solution of x equals negative 7, and solving on the right by adding 7 to each side gives us a solution of x equals 7. So our solutions are x equals negative 7 or x equals 7. Thank you so much for watching this Now Maths video on solving quadratic equations by factorising. If you would like to see how to solve harder quadratic equations with coefficients of x squared greater than 1, please check out our video on this. See you next time.